The idea to do this event was we wanted to give you something during these crazy times to help you overcome your anxiety, trauma, depression, and grief. And that's really what the Relentless Courage of a Scared Child is about.
And we have great guests for you today. Carolyn Leaf, Dr. Derwin Gray, J.J. Virgin, Joseph McClendon III, Dr. Sharon May. We're going to try and give you as many practical strategies because we are in a historically disruptive time. The incidence of depression it's tripled since March, and people are struggling with anxiety, grief. I lost my dad during the pandemic. But there are specific things you can do about it. And it's sort of a coincidence, if you believe in coincidences.
Yeah, I don't believe in coincidence.
That you wrote The Relentless Courage of a Scared Child really before the pandemic, but it's applicable now more than ever.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. So I actually, as you know, almost gave the money back to the publisher. It's very hard to write a memoir. It's hard enough to write one in general. And then if you try to write one when everyone's alive, it's really difficult.
It's hard to tell the truth.
So it was hard. But then, I always marvel at God's timing because it's so interesting how I finished this memoir and quarantine happened. The pandemic happened. And so the information in there, certainly, the title says a lot, The Relentless Courage of a Scared Child, How Persistence, Grit, and Faith Created a Reluctant Healer. And it's really about the journey of, there's so many people watching right now who have had to overcome trauma, grief, depression. And that's really what it's about. So, I guess I chose this time to write it, not knowing this was going to happen, but the timing was right for so many reasons.
Well, one of my favorite stories is in the beginning, someone looks at you and goes, well, how would you know? Look at you. So making an assumption about someone just by how they look that had nothing to do with reality.
Right.
So talk a little bit about how you know about anxiety, depression, trauma, and grief.
So, my first three memories were fairly traumatic. So my first memory was looking up from the pool, the deep end of the pool, looking up and being able to see the side, and I couldn't reach it. I was 2 years old. And I was saved by my dog, my German Shepherd, who I still have huge fondness for German Shepherds.
Which is why he's on the cover.
Right. So he was the most reliable, consistent male in my life. My father had left and abandoned me when I was a baby. And so my second memory at 2.5.
Until me.
Until you, yes. No, growing up, he was the most consistent, reliable male. And then when I was 2.5, I remember waking up in the house alone and not being able to find my mother. And so I was just panic stricken, couldn't find an adult in the house. And so that was my second memory. And my third memory was my mother and my grandmother falling to the floor screaming, and just completely chaos, pandemonium in my house. There were police in the house because my uncle had been murdered in a drug deal that went wrong. And so when you have memories like that set the stage for you, it's really hard. You're a child psychiatrist, right? So in early childhood years, you are supposed to feel, the task is for you to feel safe. It's for you to feel secure so that you can explore the world, so that you can feel safe enough to go out and try things and explore. Well, but if you're constantly worried about that tiger around the corner, if you're constantly worried about the next bad thing that's going to happen, if that's what you're always looking for, you don't.
So it primes your nervous system, sort of like what's happening during the pandemic. It's really priming our nervous system for anxiety, depression, trauma, and grief.
Right. And so instead of feeling safe enough to do those things, those tasks that you do in childhood, people who don't feel safe end up going inward. You hide because that's safer. You try to be invisible because that's more secure. And so that's really what happened. And so that's one of the reasons I wanted to write this. I remember I was with you at a John Maxwell event. You were getting an award. You got this huge award, and you were surrounded by people. And this woman walks up to me, and I believe she was from Nigeria. She was from somewhere in Africa, and she came up and she said, "I just want to tell you, I've been looking for you. I was hoping you'd be here." And I'm like, "Oh, I thought she meant you. I'm used to that happening with you." So I thought she was looking for you. And I said, "Oh, Daniel's over there." And she's like, "No, you." And she starts crying. She said, "I pray every day that God will do for my life what he's done for yours. If you can do it, I can do it." And that's when I was struggling with whether to write the book or not. I had the deal on the table and I wasn't sure I was going to take it. And I thought, I haven't really told people. I'd only told her, like, she only knew about the very superficial stuff I had revealed. And I thought, if I never take the risk to be vulnerable, then how much am I really not taking that chance on being able to help people? Because your pain today can be the thing that really helps people, and is there solution tomorrow? Is there hope for tomorrow? Right? So the pain you had yesterday or even today could be someone else's hope for tomorrow.
And by staying with us during this event, you really have the opportunity to learn from Tana, learn from our speakers to transform your life. Now, you have to take ownership and do the things that we suggest for you, but the transformation, as Tana talks about in The Relentless Courage of a Scared Child, is you can go from being a scared child to making a significant difference in your life and in the lives of those you love. You talk about the 4 circles. I mean, that's really one of the foundational principles behind our work. Do you want to talk about it a little bit?
So that's even now. So that's how, when I think about how I really did manage, people ask me all the time, how did you get out of that hole? Right? I covered it up for so long with this facade, and accomplishment is one of those things that we use sometimes to cover our pain and to cover our flaws. So people don't see how broken we are. That's what I did. I used accomplishment. I used, makeup, hair, perfect clothes, graduate top of your class, accomplish what you can. And that's what I did. I figured the more I accomplished, the less people would see how broken I was. And so if you looked at me on the outside, the package was like, oh, she looks like she's got her life together, right? But I didn't. And so as I look back and as I wrote my story, you can kind of see it. It's how we treat people at Amen Clinics. It's these 4 circles. There's the biology. It's what's going on with your body and your brain. It's the psychology. It's how are you thinking? What's going on with your thought process and, mentally. And then it's the social circle. Who are you hanging out with? Because it matters. People are contagious. And then I
have a new saying. We often say, if you want to get healthy, find the healthiest person you can stand and spend as much time around him or her as possible. Well, I changed that. If you want to be happy, find the happiest person you can stand and spend as much time around him or her as possible. Just like you said,
right.
Who you spend time with really matters.
Well, and then there's the spiritual circle, because we know people are watching. We're actually looking. There's people from all over the world right now. Spirituality means different things to different people, but it matters that you have something bigger than yourself, something that gives your life meaning and purpose, right? Because you live longer and you're happier when you have something beyond yourself that you're focused on.
Well, and one of the strategies for overcoming trauma is write your story and then give it a different ending. And I love the transformative nature of your story. And if people pre-order The Relentless Courage of a Scared Child, you actually give them exercises on how to write their story.
So that's part of the gift. We have almost $500 in gifts if you pre-order at relentlesscourage.com. And it's so that you can actually rewrite your story. So you can write the past, get it in an adult's perspective instead of the wounded child, the scared child. So you now reprocess it, but also so you can start to see the other people who hurt you through a different lens, through those 4-circle lens.
Which you totally did when you were writing this book.
You get to interview and you see it very differently. And you see how wounded they were and you see where they were coming from. And then it helps you rewrite the ending. You get to change the ending. And that's the really cool part. So yeah, there's that.
There's that.
So I really love that. So if you go to relentlesscourage.com, we have those gifts for you. And we know that a lot of you are here today because you want the scan. Let's be honest. We have to address this. They want the evaluation. They want the scan.
So if you stay till the end,
we're going to announce
that we have a winner that we're going to announce.
So we're going to announce your confirmation number, not the name, because we can't. That's a violation of privacy. We're going to announce your confirmation number. So pay attention to your confirmation number and don't worry about it if you don't remember your number or you can't find it. We're going to follow up with an email and you're going to have 72 hours to respond. If you don't respond within 72 hours, it goes to the next person in line. So that's how it's going to work. But you got to stay till the end, because this information is too valuable to just give away. We know you're here, a lot of you, for that, but we're hoping you get a lot more out of this than that, because we have these world-class speakers here.
So what, in the couple of minutes before we bring on Dr. Leaf, what do you hope people take away from the relentless courage of a scared child?
A couple of things. Hope is number one. Responsibility. We are all more beautiful because of the broken pieces in our lives, not in spite of them. So there's hope and healing. And people are, it's easy to call people bad. It's harder to ask why. Behavior is complicated.
And you finish the book with a Japanese art form.
Kintsugi, my favorite art form.
Can you talk about that for a second?
Yeah, so I had a very complicated relationship with my dad, but in the end, there's a beautiful story of healing. And that urn, I keep him in an urn. His ashes are in an urn, and it's a kintsugi urn. So it's got these beautiful breaks that are mended with gold, right? And so that represents that beauty through the brokenness, right? That beauty through the mending those pieces. And for me, that represents God's golden repair. So that's what kintsugi is. It's an art form where they take broken pottery and they mend it with gold or platinum. And they believe that it's more beautiful for the story it tells, because each break represents an incredible journey.
Which just you're more beautiful. And I am so proud of you and proud to be on this journey with you. So again, if you pre-order the book, you get all these gifts. The gifts are the one-page miracle, which is an exercise I developed many years ago, but it's foundational to transformation and health. You have to know what you want. There's a digital journal for Relentless Courage where you help them tell their story. You also do mindfulness and training for them. There's a 4-circle exercise, and you're going to match.
You said the course, right?
I didn't. And we have 5 lessons from overcoming anxiety, depression, trauma, and grief course that Tana and I did together. So all you have to do is go to relentlesscourage.com, pre-order the book, put in your order number, and then you can download all these free gifts. All right. We have our first guest.
So excited.
And I am very excited to introduce you to my friend, your friend, Dr. Carolyn Leaf, who is going to be with us any minute.
Hold on. Hello.
Yes.
Hi, friends. It's so nice to see you.
Oh, it's so nice to see you, Dr.
Looking happy and beautiful as always.
So thank you. It's so nice to be with you. And I've just been listening to you both, and you're such an inspiration. Honestly, you're amazing. I love listening to you.
So let me introduce you. Dr. Carolyn Leaf has spent the last 30 years researching the mind-brain connection, the nature of mental health, and the formation of memory. She was one of the first in her field to study how the brain can change, love that, with directed mind input, neuroplasticity. Through her years of clinical practice, she's helped hundreds of thousands of people learn how to use their mind to detox and grow their brain to succeed in every area of their lives, in school, including schools, university, and work. So happy Saturday morning. We're just so excited to welcome you to the relentless courage of a scared child and overcoming anxiety, depression, trauma, and grief.
I'm so grateful that you're here with us, Dr. Leaf.
I'm so honored. You two are amazing. And it's just such a pleasure knowing you both and the work you do. And it's just beautiful. Your book is beautiful as well. And everything you do, Daniel, is just outstanding. So you both amazing.
Thank you so much. So we have about 15 minutes, and I want to make sure we make the most of that for the people watching. So you are this expert on cleaning up the mental mess during uncertain times and managing worry. What is a tip that you can give people on managing worry and cleaning up the mental messes in their minds?
Lovely
How
question.
do you do that?
Well, I think what the easiest way to understand that is that if you think of it, you can go 3 days without food. You can go 3 minutes without oxygen, but you can go 3 days without, 3 weeks without food, 3 days without water, 3 minutes without oxygen, but you cannot even go 3 minutes without thinking. So we're always thinking. So my premise is that if we're always thinking, we're always using our mind, our brain is therefore always changing. So we need to be proactive in how we're managing our mind. So the sort of major thing that I work around is being proactive in how you manage your mind so that you can direct neuroplasticity in your brain. So that's self-regulation, and that's really key. And from the research I've done for 38 years and the work that you guys know as well, is that you actually can consciously and deliberately manage your mind every 10 seconds, which is phenomenal. You know, the science is there, it's proven, it's shown, and that's what I've done my work on all these years. So it's training, it's a skill, it's definitely a skill. We are aware, but are we deliberate and intentionally aware about how we're thinking, how we're feeling, how we're choosing, and monitoring that process? And that's kind of the core of my work.
So is mindfulness meditation one of the ways that you do that?
I would call that brain preparation. So you need to prepare your brain, but then you need to go beyond mindfulness. So all of those techniques, like the meditation and breathing and havening and tapping and all are vital, and they all form part of brain preparation. But then they bring up a lot of awareness. But once you're aware, you need to do something with what you're aware of. Otherwise, from the research I've done, it'll actually increase trauma in your brain. It'll increase anxiety. So you can't just be aware. You have to be aware, and then you have to manage that awareness in fixed sound bites of time. So then I would talk about going beyond mindfulness. So the processes I've developed is actually now taking self-regulation to mindfulness first for brain preparation, and then going beyond into a very deliberate process of self-regulation.
Okay, so for people listening, it can be really hard to do that if you're really anxious. Like these times right now, people are anxious, they are depressed, they're getting triggered with feelings of PTSD. What are your recommendations for controlling those emotions right now?
So to know that you don't have to always be switched on in a perpetual summer. So when I talk about self-regulation, I'm not talking about self-regulating your trauma all day long. That's way too much. But fixing it to fixed periods of time. So for example, in the morning when your cortisol's higher and everything's just coming online, it's very good time to limit work on trauma to maybe an hour in the morning or batches of time during the day, but only 1 or 2 of trauma during the day. The rest of the day, you want to be self-regulating in terms of how you are just going through the day, managing just being alive. And in that management, we want to self-regulate things like bringing on gratitude, bringing on awareness of what I have achieved instead of what I haven't achieved. One of the techniques that is really powerful to stop you going back into constant thinking of the trauma and to stop the rumination and overthinking is to do 2 things. One is a 10-second pause exercise where you cognitively and you breathe and you cognitive. So you breathe in for 3 and you breathe out for 7. The research shows that the longer whoosh out increases your decision-making capability. So then I add a little cognitive exercise because I teach people that mind is separate from brain but works through brain and changes brain, and brain responds to mind. So then mind is how you think, feel, and choose. So when you do that 10-second pause, as you breathe in, as you inhale, you just inhale, you're inhaling the air, but you're inhaling this I will think, feel, and you actually say in your mind, think, feel. And then as you breathe out for 7 counts, you say choose. And if you do that between 1 to 7 to 9 times, you can bring your neurochemicals and things in your brain and the neurotransmitters and the whole sort of the different energy waves, alpha, beta, theta, gamma, into an alignment where you can calm down. And then you can focus straight into something like a little 3-to-1 gratitude exercise, a positivity exercise. So for every negative thought thought you catch yourself thinking, you then force yourself to replace it with 3 positive thoughts. And that ratio of 1 to 3 has been, the research has shown, tips the scale and then helps you to then come back into a self-regulated state where you can start getting the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system calmed down, and then you can continue with your activity. I mean, those are just 2 of many things. But I'm really hot on limiting trauma work to 1 block in a day, because the temptation is to just keep doing it all day long, and you can't. You've got to, like, you do it now, you limit, it's exhausting mentally and physically, and then you shift over. And that's what the techniques that I've developed, basically, the process that I do.
Oh, that's fantastic. So I think you kind of answered this, but I want to just be clear. So a lot of people, and I know I certainly did this for years, they feel like it's too much to think about, especially if they're stressed out during these times. Like, they've already got enough current stress going on. So they'll push down these thoughts or feelings or anxiety, depression, trauma, PTSD, whatever it is that's really got them bothered, and they don't deal with it. Do you think that that can be helpful in times that are really stressful, or is it better to deal with them head on?
It's a brilliant question. I'm all about organization. So number 1, suppression will damage your brain. So what I've just seen in my recent clinical trials, and I mean, Daniel, I know you know this. So in the recent clinical trials, we saw very clearly with using the QEEG that when you suppress thoughts, you actually create tremendous damage in the brain. So it upsets the entire alpha, beta, gamma, delta flow, all the flow changes. And when that changes, then you have your increase in homocysteine and cortisol, you get increased inflammation. So suppression is not the answer, but constantly working on it is also not the answer. So once again, I come back to working on preparation and then going beyond preparation with the process that I've developed in a limited time period during the day. And then the rest of the day, you basically you allow yourself to distract yourself. So it's a temporary distraction. You've worked on it in the morning. Now you leave it the rest of the day. You don't go in a constant ongoing cycle. So suppression is not the answer, because suppression will increase, for example, as I explained, the cortisol and the homocysteine, and even shorten the telomeres. We saw that in a 9-week period, my subjects that were just aware but weren't managing or just thinking about it all day long and then trying to shove it back down, we saw that their telomeres shortened significantly. But those subjects that were actually managing their mind through brain preparation, through going beyond mindfulness in a fixed period of time, and then doing temporary distraction during the day, in other words, going about your day, doing the little, like the breathing exercise or the various different exercises that keep you in a safe mental space until you work tomorrow. So if it comes up during the rest of the day, you say, okay, I acknowledge it. You don't want to suppress, but I'm not going to work on it now. So you compartmentalize with a temporary distraction, and then you build in a buffer that you give yourself something like go for a walk, do something fun, do that 3-to-1 exercise, so that so suppression is never the answer. We saw tremendous damage in increased levels of like little red foci across the brain, and even what I call a red brain, where the entire brain just flared up when people were constantly anxious and then shoving it down, and then they got increased delta during the day, which is not good. You want delta at night. You don't want high levels of delta during the day. So it creates all this conflict in you, and you just go in this negative circle. So it's definitely...
Tana actually has a story about this. She's been busy the last few days and went to the ENT, and she would avoid anything that triggered the dizziness because some of the crystals in her ear became loose. And he told you purposefully to go into
stop avoiding
the dizziness rather than stop avoiding it, because when you go into the pain, you can actually assess it, because often the pain is triggered from things in the past, like you talked about.
Right.
But when you evaluate it from an adult perspective, it often settles down.
And so what this makes me think of is you're talking about how it's damaging the brain, but also causes other health issues. So when people say that your physical health issues are all in your head, it's true.
It is true. No, it is true. It's absolutely
not the negative way.
It is true, and it's a positive way, and that's why you have to control it. And I so agree with Daniel. The only way out is through. In the whole Western philosophy.
The only way out.
The way out is through. So if you don't acknowledge, you're going to create that suppression. It's going to explode in your brain and your body in various different ways. So we have to deal with it. We have a tremendously negative attitude in Western culture that's come from 50 years of the wrong flow, the wrong view of how we see mental health. And that is that we say as soon as someone has anxiety or depression or anything negative, we see that as bad and we've got to suppress it. That is a symptom of an illness we must suppress. Meanwhile, that's the worst thing you can do. They show a recent study, plus I also found this in my recent clinical trials. If you shift your attitude and you embrace that anxiety and you embrace that depression and you embrace and look at it just like you've described, embracing implies bring it into you in like a positive way. And so instead of fearing the anxiety, you embrace it. As soon as you embrace it, it comes up into the conscious mind. I always use this toxic thought to show that, this toxic tree to show toxic thought. As soon as you embrace something, you've shifted the power balance. You now control that instead of that controlling you. Whereas if you suppress it, it's controlling you. Whereas if you embrace it, there's a message in the anxiety. So by facing it and saying, I acknowledge you, you're looking for the message in the messenger. So anxiety and depression turn into messengers, warning signals versus these scary symptoms of an illness, a neuropsychiatric brain disease, which is very scary. So you can't suppress because if you push this down, it does that damage. So we do need to embrace, but we do need to limit. We can't do it all day long. We've got to give ourselves a rest. We run out of energy. So
we only have a minute left, Carolyn. How can people learn about your work? I know we've had you on the Brain Warriors Way podcast. I was just recently part of an online event you did.
Yes.
How can people learn more about the goodness you bring to the world?
Thank you. Well, they can go to all my social media handles, Dr. Caroline Leaf. My webpage is drleaf.com. I've got a new book coming out as well. It's on pre-order, Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess. That's out next year. They can go to our website and pre-order as well. And yeah, that's pretty much the normal way that they get hold of us. drleaf.com, cleaningupyourmentalmess.com, and my social media handle, Dr. Caroline Leaf.
Excellent. I love this thing that you say, about responding and not reacting. So I want them to be able to pick up your book and learn more about responding, not reacting. We actually learn that in martial arts as well. You need to be able to respond without reacting.
Yes. So good.
Yeah.
Well, we are grateful for you and for all of your work. We look forward to when we can actually see you in person.
Yes. Oh gosh, that would be wonderful.
Been so hard, but at least, and this is a strategy for everyone. Isolation dramatically increases the incidence of anxiety, depression, trauma, and grief. So by following you, by listening to the Brain Warriors Way podcast, it's just a method where you can get a bit of therapy all the time. That's very cost effective. All right, my friend.
Thank you.
Well, hopefully we get to see you soon.
Hopefully. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
I love Dr. Leaf. She's awesome.
Guests.
Well, and now we have someone coming up who's a good friend of ours, and we're just so excited to share our friends with you. So coming up is Pastor Derwin Gray, Dr. Derwin Gray. Hello, Derwin.
What's up, my friends? You guys are just pure epicness. Love y'all. just love how you are helping us. So just so appreciative of your friendship and just how you guys are changing the world.
So I don't know if I got a chance to tell you this, Dr. Gray, but your endorsement when you sent it for my book actually made me cry. It just was one of my absolute favorites. It made me cry. And there's just something about you from the moment I met you that's always been, I just felt this certain connection to you. So I'm so grateful that you're joining us today.
So let me say a little bit about him. Pastor Gray is a former NFL player turned author. He has written The Good Life, What Jesus Teaches About Finding True Happiness. He is the pastor of Transformation church in on the border of South Carolina and North Carolina. He will show you that you have the ability to move past any circumstances, no matter how challenging. And Pastor Gray and I met. He spoke at Saddleback Church, where Tana and I go.
You met because of me.
Do you want to tell the story?
So we actually heard him at church, and I started crying when I heard your story. There's just sometimes you hear people's stories, and there's something about it that just gets to you. And your story just got to me. And why would your story of all people's get to me so much? I mean, I didn't grow up the same way you did, but very similar in some ways. You're an ex-NFL player. You're a pastor. You are a very large man. I'm not, but your story just really affected me. And so I told you, I'm like, he's not going to take the time to talk to me. He's going to take the time to talk to you. You are going with me. We are going to go meet him. So.
Well, I am grateful that you did that. And before I kind of share, I just want to say what I appreciated about your book was the honesty, the vulnerability, but also the transformative nature of your book. Is that sometimes people stop with, okay, this is how I've been hurt, but you didn't stop there. You didn't stop with, this is how I've been hurt. You've actually turned your hurt into becoming an instrument of healing as healing emanates from you. And I think that's so powerful because you give us permission to say, I've been wounded and hurt in unspeakable ways, but yet God's love spoke over me. And now I want to share that love with you, that healing and transformation is possible. It's not easy. Anything worth anything is never easy, but God's grace is sufficient. But you give us permission to go, this is not what I signed up for. However, this is the story that I find myself in, but I'm so thankful that God is a great editor and he writes a new one.
Absolutely. How do you define purpose and faith?
Well, so the way I would define purpose before I became a follower of Christ is to be successful. And in my mind, because I grew up in the ghetto, I grew up with a father wound. I grew up things that I had normalized great dysfunction. And I've shared this with you guys before. When I would come home from college or when I would return home to San Antonio from college or from the NFL, when I'd get on the plane, my face would just begin to twitch. And also I grew up as a compulsive stutterer as well. And now I see that a lot of that was rooted in a form of PTSD, that it was just normal to hear gunshots or violence or family members pointing guns at each other. Like everywhere you had to go, you had to be on the lookout to literally survive. And so I had normalized a lot of that. So in my mind, success was you get out of the hood, you're able to help your family get out of the hood. So it was money, it was status, it was power, it was all those things. And what happened to me at the age of 25 is I had an existential crisis that, wait a second, everything that I was told to be successful actually didn't fix the part of me that hurt the most. It didn't fix my self-worth. Like, it was amazing. I could walk into a room as an NFL player and still feel worthless, still feel like that poor kid from the hood, still feel like the kid whose dad never went to the game. So the way I define purpose now is this way. Your career is not your purpose. Your career is how your purpose is expressed. And I believe that our purpose is to receive the love of God and to give that love away through the unique talents and abilities that we have. And I know that there are people listening now going, well, what unique talents do I have? As long as you have breath in your lungs, God has given you a uniqueness that only you have for this world at this time. Now, it may not become a New York Times best-selling author like you two, but never minimize the small things. Jesus said the faith of a mustard seed. And so little acts of kindness generated by love is what changes the world. And so I think the purpose of humanity is to let God love you and then to give that love away to as many people as possible through your career, whatever your career may be.
Derwin, as a pastor, what have been the pandemic challenges you have seen? You know, as a psychiatrist, I've seen suicide skyrocket like nothing I've ever seen, and anxiety and depression. What is happening at Transformation Church?
The same is we have not seen any suicides, thankfully, but the amount of anxiety, the amount of depression, brain health issues are presenting more now. People are lonely. And I think some of it also too, Doc, is COVID has exposed a lot of the things that we went to bring us healing, and they have been found to be not enough. You know, Jesus said, if you build your life on sand, when the waves come and the winds blow, it's going to fall down. If you build it on the rock, it can withstand those things. And I think for a lot of us, the things that we thought were going to be ultimate were stripped away, and we found ourselves going, what do I do now? And so I think that's why community is so important. I think that's why treating people with kindness and love and checking on them is so important, because we are communal beings. We need touch. We need affirmation. We need those things. And so what the pandemic has done is it disrupted all that. I know the first 3 weeks of the lockdown, I found myself going, wait a second, I need to get out and go run, because this just isn't normative. And so I'm a hopeful optimist, and here's why. It's because Jesus's tomb is empty. So I'm always optimistic because he rose. That means new creation has come. And I think that out of this COVID, we're actually going to learn a new way to be human, to not take each other for granted, to learn how to love, but also to learn how to process pain, to not be afraid of it. I loved what the doctor said, is that you want to go through it. And so she was speaking football language to me, because as a football player, there's going to come a point in the game where you're very, very tired, and you can focus on being tired, or you can actually use that tiredness as motivation. And so I think that when you look at the person of Christ, that he cares about everything, and he wants to draw us deeper into that to really discover our humanity.
I love that. So as I'm listening to your story, once again, I'm like connecting. I remember now why I felt so connected to you. It was just amazing hearing your story then, and it's amazing hearing it again. I've often said that was the premise of Relentless Courage of a Scared Child, because I remember standing on a stage and being so judgmental towards all these people. But when I could see them as scared children like I was, it didn't matter where they came from. All the labels sort of fell away. Didn't matter if they were Black, white, Asian, didn't matter. It didn't matter if they were recovering addicts. It didn't matter what. If we could just go back to that place where we were all scared children, we could connect. We could come together. And I just love what you said. It's so beautiful. But what do you say to people who, I know there are people from all over the world watching us right now, because I'm seeing it. Not everybody has the same beliefs we have. What do you say to somebody who doesn't believe in God?
Yeah. What I would say to somebody that doesn't believe in God is I would say God loves you and God believes in you, and that life is a journey. And one day you'll be able to look back and see his fingerprints all over your life. And what I would say this too is that I think why we connected and why I'm such great friends with y'all is at the end of the day, all of us are wounded children in need of affirmation, in need of someone saying, I love you, I believe in you, you can do it, and I'm for you. And that's something that we don't hear enough, because so much of our self-worth, so much of the way we take upon the wounds that were unleashed upon us, we begin to allow those wounds to define us. And so, we, at the end of the day, like, we're like sixth graders in middle school and we can't find our locker and we need the eighth graders to help us find it.
Right.
And that's what you guys are doing. And that's what Relentless Courage is. It's letting people know that what the enemy brought to destroy you, God is actually going to use to make you. What was sent to break you actually begins to make you. And you guys know my story. Briefly, parents were teenagers. Both my mom and dad have substance abuse disorder, brain health issues. And for so long, I lived angry at them. Now I have compassion for them. I scored a 16 on my ACT to get into school. Now I've got 2 doctorates. And so oftentimes in our pain, we discover a purpose that allows us to become wounded healers. And then we get this relentless courage. I love that. Relentless courage. And life is tough, right? Life is tough, but that doesn't mean that we can't be loving and kind. I actually think that the toughest people are the most loving. And when we redefine tough is, I'm going to help you discover who you can be, discover how you can heal. That's a good thing.
I love that.
I just love listening to you. Just from someone who did not grow up with a lot of trauma, although I had 5 sisters, so it counts a little bit. But there's still that scared child. So if you're listening and you're struggling with anxiety and depression and you're like, but my parents were nice, I think all of us have wounds, and engaging in the right mental habits in the 4 circles that Tana talked about, get your brain right, your mind right, your relationships right, and your spirit right, your deepest sense of meaning and purpose. And I loved what you said for people who don't believe, well, God still loves you anyways. And I mean, it's just always been a part of my life that we're not here by random chance, and that our lives have meaning, they have purpose. And when you engage in that purpose, you're happier. You live longer.
Hey, Doc, I'm getting an impression to share something. I don't know who this is for, but I feel like there are people that are listening who have just beat themselves up for so long. They have this standard upon themselves that no human can carry. And so what I want to say to you is you are more loved than you know. And it's okay not to be perfect, because there's only been one person who ever was. The goal is not to be perfect. The goal is to learn how to receive love and to give love away, and that you're not too damaged. No one is too damaged. I don't know what has happened to you. I don't know what you've gone through, but you are not too damaged to be loved. Your life matters, and the world is better with you in it.
I love that.
I love that. That's so beautiful.
Derwin, how can people find your work?
DerwinLGray.com, DerwinLGray.com, DerwinLGray.com.
And you have your book, The Good Life.
Yes, my book, The Good Life, is a national bestseller. It's in its second printing, and I'm teaching people how to be happy.
Wonderful.
I love that. And you can also actually see services at Transformation.
I love your Instagram, by the way. Love your Instagram.
Yeah, transformationchurch.tc. Transformationchurch.tc.
I love that. We love you, my friend. Happy holidays. Thank you for being with us.
So grateful.
All right. Wow.
He's awesome.
I love Dr. Gray, but I also love Dr. Sharon May, who is here with us. She is a very special friend.
There she is.
Hi, Sharon.
Hello, good morning.
Hi, Dr. May.
Thank you so much for being with us. Dr. Sharon May is the founder and president of Safe Haven Relationship Counseling Center. She is the author of a number of books, but one is How to Argue So Your Spouse Will Listen. Dr. May is a world-renowned relationship psychologist. We've had her on our podcast. We've interviewed her a number of times. One of her interviews actually sparked the dragons from the past.
They're wonderful.
That still breathe fire on your emotional brain, which she and I are going to talk a lot more about, not today. But we're working in this historically stressful time.
Well, and divorce is up how much?
In one city I read, it was up 122%.
That's
Yes.
astounding. But because people are together so much. So what do we do about relationships, Dr. May, in this unprecedented time?
Yes.
How can we have better relationships?
Absolutely. You know, in this time, there are some couples and families that have been able to come together and face the danger out there as an us. They're able to find new ways of connecting and new adventures, and they're enjoying time home. But some of those families now and other couples are finding the stress of being together. This heightens concentrated time together. If couples already had troubles, it heightens the troubles. You're in my space. I'm overwhelmed. You're at me. If they didn't have good conflict resolution skills, now they're heightened. They can't resolve conflict. They argue. Everything irritates them. And they have nowhere to go. They feel trapped. There's no social events. There's no going to work. There's no, just getting away. Or even resetting the button with date nights and going away for the weekend. Mm-hmm. And so couples now, more than ever, are highly stressed and in conflict.
So what would be one suggestion you have for helping people reconnect if we don't have a choice, we're going through this time?
Well, the one question you should ask yourself before you propose to someone.
Now
the one question you should ask is, if there's a pandemic, can I stand this person long enough? And I'm just so grateful that
I am too.
Because that's not true with all the relationships in the past.
No.
I may have murdered someone.
No, we've done really well with it. But what would be your tip for people who we don't have a choice? What is a tip for, where's a starting point for them to come together if they've just not been doing well through this?
Yes. Well, what makes a good marriage is the couple's ability to emotionally connect, a couple's ability to, in the midst of conflict, turn toward each other and repair it. And also a couple's ability to really trust each other with their hearts. I trust you have my best interest at heart, so that if you're not taking the trash out, you're in my space, you're reorganizing the kitchen, you're criticizing me as to how I organize the kitchen, that I know you have my best interest at heart, and we're able to turn toward and repair. And there is this trust in a relationship. But if you haven't had trust growing up, and you haven't felt safe in your relationships growing up, and the two of you have not really been able to deal with conflict, you sort of live a little bit of parallel lives so you can get away with not getting along or having conflict, then being in this concentrated time heightens all of that. Then all the small events mean you don't care about me, I can't trust you, I've got to guard my heart, I've got to defend myself, and I put up a barrier and I'm disconnecting. And that defensive disconnecting is what is dangerous to couples. And I think for couples to be aware of what gets triggered in me when you do this or don't do that. It's sort of like a warm fire. Our relationships, as the pastor said prior, are like warm fires that we come to for comfort and care and to be home. But if our past experiences have been fires or burn, I can't trust the fire, people, life is out to get me or hurt me, then coming close becomes dangerous. And those alarms sound. And couples nowadays in this pandemic are living with alarms sounding, saying, I can't trust you with my heart. I'm defensive, I'm guarding, I'm protesting. And that conflict is heightened.
That's so interesting you say that. I can see where that's probably even worse if both people have been through trauma in the past, if neither one of them have experienced trusting relationships or don't know trust. And not everybody's as lucky as I am to be married to someone like Tana who is very psychologically savvy. But I know going through this, my defenses were automatically up, right? I didn't feel safe. And so it triggered a lot from my past about not feeling safe. And I remember one day, I just have to tell this really fast. I was feeling like, because I'm in my prep mode. When I feel not safe, I'm like, I need to prepare. I need to get my environment safe. And so I'm like getting everything ready. I'm bleaching everything. I'm buying stuff. I'm like, and I was ready for him because he's not like that. He's the opposite of me. So I was ready for him to argue with me.
Yes.
And he walked in the house and he sat down and he hugged me and he goes, what if I buy a freezer? And I know it sounds so silly. That one statement said to me, I see you.
Yes.
I see your fear. I see what you're going through. Let me help you. And I don't know why. My whole being just settled down. And if I could say one thing to people watching, it's just if you can just see what someone's doing, if you can see beyond their behavior to what's behind it,
right?
What's going on from their past, maybe you can just address it in that way. It was so helpful to me.
Well, and Maslow, a very famous psychologist, said safety first.
Yes.
And so too many people have mismatched anxiety, is that some people are really anxious about this time we live in, and some people think it's a hoax and they're not anxious at all. Well, I think on a scale of 1 to 10,
I'm an 11.
You're an 11 and I'm a 3. But if you can see the other person's anxiety and help them with it rather than have to fight them, because it's just so damaging. So talk about the dragons from the past, because you taught me about them and how they impact
and they're so
relationships.
Yes. So when we are growing up, our life experiences teach us how safe life is, how safe others are, how others will be there for us or not, how we need to get the love we want, and how to react when we feel, no, you're not safe, you won't be there, or how we protest, please, I'm begging you to be here. And those form our dragons. This is the lens through which we view life. These become what we're sensitive to. And this is how we interpret situations. So, we're all human beings. So we've all had some mishaps, pains, and hurts in life where we feel, people aren't there for us. I've been wounded. So we all have dragons. Some have been more wounded than others, where their dragons are big and their dragons really are trying to protect them. So it's like, hey, your husband didn't check to see if the doors are locked, and your dragons put the meaning on it. Oh, you're unsafe. Your mom and dad never protected you. And now your husband, he doesn't care about you. He is selfish. You're not a priority. And your dragons put the meaning on it. And the dragons then put you on alert. And now I'm going to protest what I see. And I'm going to fight it so I can be heard and seen and understood. Try to regain safety. But when your other spouse is not aware of your trauma or your dragons, your spouse thinks, you're crazy, lady. You're just trying to beat me up. You're mean, you're ugly, and you're emotionally abusive. And now I need to protect myself. So I fight you back. I match your intensity. And now you get two couples who are fighting dragons, fighting survival, you didn't come sit on the couch with me. You don't love me. You never have. You're crazy. No, you don't even, make me my breakfast. So, and now we're fighting. And that's what we're seeing with couples right now.
Thank God it's not with you.
I think that's part of why we work, because you don't match my intensity and you're always the yin to my yang.
Sharon, when should couples seek help?
If couples find that they can't get out of this cycle and they are like, my spouse is accusing me of doing doesn't match what I feel I'm doing, and we can't get unstuck, get help. If you find you've emotionally disconnected and you're living parallel lives, get help. If you can't repair arguments and you sweep them under the rug, get help. And if it's hard to really trust your spouse's intention, you, Tana, trust Daniel's intention. You love me, you care for me, you're my safe haven. I can trust you with my heart. So your smile, your repair attempts, I can absorb your warmth and your love. But when I can't, and I don't trust it, we need to get help. And when we find I'm not being kind to you, I'm being easily irritated, and we just can't get unstuck from that. We might get together to be able to take care of the kids and do life, but I just can't emotionally reconnect with you. I can't trust you with my heart, and we're not able to just enjoy each other. Get help. I'd say that majority of couples who divorce did not need to. They needed to understand their dragons, their argument cycle, and learn how to unhook. So to be each other's safe haven, to be warmed by each other's fire, to know how to absorb it, to be each other's fireplace. I also advise.
And let me just say this clear to everybody that's listening. It's the smart person. It's the strong person that gets help, not the weak person. If your business is failing, it's really the smart business person that finds the best consultant they can, or they may go bankrupt. Too often, because of how mental help is portrayed, is people see it as a sign of weakness. It's absolutely the opposite. It's a sign of strength, and it's way cheaper than a divorce. So, how can people learn more about your work? I mean, we love you, and we're just so happy you're our friend and colleague. You and I, work together with patients and clients. How can people learn more about the wisdom that you've developed over these years?
Yes, we offer safe haven intensives for both individuals as well as for couples. And you can go to our website, safehavenrelationshipcenter.com, to find out about our intensives to help couples love well. Our email is grow@havenofsafety.com. But if you go to our website, Safe Haven Relationship Center, you can find out about our Zoom intensives and our workbooks and other resources.
Wonderful.
Well, Merry Christmas, my friend. We wish you safety and happiness during this time. You are needed now more than ever.
Amen. Thank you. And to everyone else, just love well during this season. Thanks so much. Blessings.
Great.
Wonderful.
Thanks, Sharon.
Bye.
My
Awesome.
goodness.
I know.
That was so
wonderful lineup.
Great. And now someone else we love, Dr. JJ Virgin, who JJ and I have known each other 20 years.
JJ helped you buy one of the first gifts you bought for me after therapy. She helped you buy, she took you shopping and helped you buy a gift for me.
JJ is a triple board certified nutrition expert and fitness Hall of Famer. She's a passionate advocate of eating and exercise smarter. JJ and her team help people stay fired up and healthy as they age, so they feel the best they ever have at 40 plus. Her latest book, Warrior Mom, 7 Secrets to Bold, Brave Resilience, shows caregivers everywhere how to be strong, positive leaders for their family while exploring the inspirational lessons JJ learned as she fought for her own son's life.
So while we're waiting for JJ to come on, I want to just go back. She's written this new book, Warrior Mom. She sort of shifted from food to tell the story about her son and talking about mindset from when her son was in the hospital. And I will never forget the day that we got the call from JJ about her son being hit by it was a hit and run driver, and he was in the hospital, and we went and saw her. And when we walked in the unit, I'm like, this is not a good thing, because she was in the unit that I used to work in. Her son was in the unit that I used to work in. And it's a tragic thing when you walk into a level A trauma unit, and her son was very young. So fortunately for him, he was very young. But that's when that warrior mindset came out for JJ. I mean, like in a way that it never had before. And so it was pretty crazy. But we were there and we saw that happen. And I just remember JJ completely taking charge. I don't know if you remember that, but I've, in my entire time working as a nurse, never saw any family member be able to walk in and say, I'm setting up shop. Like, she set up a desk in one of the rooms and was writing her book. So she just took control of her son's.
Hey, Tana, I'm going to take control now, because apparently I just need to talk so you know I'm here.
There you go.
We just saw you. Well, hello, my beautiful friend.
Hi.
It's so nice to see you during this historically crazy
Well,
time. So I've already introduced you. And
I heard. I've been hanging out, lurking. I thought maybe I'll just stay longer and I'll hear more nice things. So
well, now we can see you. So.
There I am. And I am. I'm taking credit for Tana, Daniel.
yeah, no, you went
There you go.
shopping and helped him pick out a great gift, and
Right?
good taste. I thought he had amazing taste, so it was awesome. He was smart to ask. So thank you so much for joining us, JJ. We were talking
JJ is
about.
also the reason I own Brain MD, our supplement company.
Oh, interesting.
Because she was
I was bossy. I was a bully.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But Brain MD grew 50% this year, and it provides the products and services, but mostly the nutritional supplements to optimize brain function. And JJ was just a huge part of that story.
I love it.
But we are here today talking about overcoming anxiety, depression, trauma, and grief. And nutrition's just a huge part of that.
And the reason I started with your story in the hospital is because that was a huge, I know it was obviously, you went through something that no parent, that's like the worst thing any parent can ever imagine. And it not only is your new book about mindset, but we want to talk to you about, because I remember you taking charge of your son's care, his nutrition, his supplementation. I mean, everything. You were not joking. And so, like, we want to talk about not just the mindset, but why was nutrition and supplementation so important in that healing process for you?
You know, what's interesting, Tana, is, and it wasn't just for him, it also was what I did for myself. And, you know, as the pandemic started to roll out earlier this year, it felt like I was getting transported back to that same time where I was standing in the ICU, realizing that in order for me to be able to take care of my son, I had to prioritize my self-care, that there was no margin for error and I could not get sick, right? And I feel like we're right back into that. And so there was so much that I did for his nutrition, but the key critical thing, because it's so counterintuitive, I think, for most of us, is that I started with myself first, because I knew, where that might sound selfish, oh, you put yourself last, be a martyr. Really, the only possible way I could have done what I did for him was to make sure that I was showing up, strong 100%.
That's amazing. And I agree with you 100%. I mean, that's really my approach as well. I agree. You can't take care of everyone else if you are not well. And I just remember you, I mean, you were strong, you were intense, and you were going to take care of stuff, and you did. And I remember you setting up shop in the hospital and you weren't leaving. And
nope.
It was fantastic, though. It was fantastic to see. And succeeded. I mean, you succeeded. I mean, your son, I got chills when I walked into that unit because that's the unit I used to work in. And it's a scary unit. And you succeeded in really pulling your son through this. And you were stronger than you've ever been in going through that. And so and I agree with you. This time triggered me as well. It triggered me like from that time of, like trauma. And it's like, we need to be healthy because we've got to get through this. And this is going to be a long haul. So I love what you said. But what were some of the things that you did? Like, what are some practical tips for people?
So, practical tips, and I'll start with what I did for me, and then I'll talk a little bit about what I did for Grant, because I think probably what I did for me is the most applicable. And it sort of blows up that whole excuse of, oh, I don't have time, right? Because here I was getting to the hospital around 6 a.m., leaving at about 8 p.m., and they're pretty much all day. And as you know, hospitals have the most unhealthy food ever, which is so bizarre. And so the first thing that I did was prioritize my sleep. And here's what's interesting. My son was in a coma, and I'll kind of go along with what I did with him too. I realized, that he still wasn't going to go through his good circadian rhythm if he was in a coma, but the lights were on all the time. So I used an eye mask for him. And that's an important one to think about, because, if you're sleeping in a place where it's not totally dark, you are not going to get high quality sleep. And that is one of the big things that can hit your immune system and then start to create anxiety, and stress.
Absolutely. Smart.
Yeah. So I didn't think of that. One of my, I had so many friends come into the hospital and go, hey, you might want to think about, and I thought, gosh, this is the most amazing. I had all of the top experts' opinions, including, of course, you two came into the hospital and helped, which I am eternally grateful for. But the big thing that I did was really prioritize my food and managing stress. I kind of realized the first night I was standing in the hospital when the doctors were telling me that I needed to let my son go, my 16-year-old son, who was on life support in a coma with multiple brain bleeds, 13 fractures, a torn aorta. They said he's just not going to survive this, And they didn't want me to fly him to the hospital that would save his life. They thought he wouldn't make it, but we overruled them and did that. And as I'm standing there at that next hospital, I was so stressed, like I could feel the acid in my chest. I just was like, right. And the first thing that I did was send an SOS out to all of my friends and go, okay, I need whatever you have here to help me through all of this with this stress. And, obviously it's getting the sugar out of your diet and eating very blood sugar balanced meals. So I was having anyone coming to visit, I was like, bring food. You made all that amazing food for me. Oh my gosh. I'll never forget that.
It's probably, if you've got someone who's struggling like JJ did, or in any way, helping them with nutrition is probably one of the best things you can do. It's
so great, especially if you've got, if you have a friend going through any of this, maybe they're sick right now, home cooked meals. Like I was living in a little residence inn. I was not having home cooked meals. I was, going to Whole Foods pretty much for everything. So having home cooked meals made a big difference, but making sure too that I was eating some clean protein, healthy fats, and fiber from a lot of plants at each meal. So my blood sugar was stable, because stress just sends your blood sugar on a crazy roller coaster that makes you then crave sugar, that then's going to blow up your immune system and affect your sleep. So I was so careful with my diet.
When blood sugar drops because you've had a sugar burst, you actually make bad decisions. And at a time when Grant was in the hospital, you really can't afford making bad decisions.
That's my next question is how much do you think that getting sleep, eating well, your supplementation, how much do you think that's connected to your warrior mindset?
Here's the craziest thing that happened in my community. That makes me realize that your mindset is what's going to determine all of this. So I didn't start eating healthy and then think, oh, I should put myself first. I said, wow, in order to be able to take care of my son and help him get to be 110% better than before the accident. That was my crazy, outrageous goal, was to get him, because I had to have something to keep me going. was to do that. And so it starts first with the mindset, and then you do the behaviors. So I did this survey with my community a couple years ago, and I said, if you are not where you want to be in your health, if your weight's not where you want it to be, if your health's not where you want it to be, why not? And it was an open-ended question where they could write whatever they want. And oh my gosh, did they write? Like I got pages. But there was a universal theme throughout all of these people and what they wrote. And you would think superficially when someone's not where they want to be with their health that, I thought, they're going to say it's sugar or, they can't stop the ice cream or something like that. But the common thread through everyone was that they didn't feel worthy. Mm. It was not a strategy problem. It was not a cravings problem. It was a mindset problem. So we always have to come from the mindset first, right, in order to get the behaviors to follow.
I love that. So if I'm hearing you right, mindset came first because you're a warrior, no doubt. You're a powerhouse. I know personally. So
you guys are actually very similar.
We are very similar. She is a huge powerhouse.
So mindset came first. That determines how the outcome of what your decision making with food and nutrition. But that then is going to make the determination in your day-to-day decision making, which is also
absolutely
affect your sleep.
And here's what's so awesome. What's so awesome about that is your mindset's a muscle. As we know from Carol Dweck, you can have a growth mindset. And so this isn't something that costs money. This isn't something that, you weren't born tall. This is something that we can all shift. I was just fortunate that at the age of 30, I had what I thought was going to be a business coach. And the reality was this woman was a mindset coach, one of the top mindset coaches in the world. And I lived with her for 6 months. And so I credit my son being 110% to her. I credit actually all of my success because the biggest shift in my life was the time I spent with her and how she taught me to shift my mindset.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So wonderful. So what can people do today? What's one thing they can do today to start shifting their mindset?
And we only have 3 minutes.
I also want to
talk about how people can learn about you and your work.
So here's an interesting one that Kay Smith did with me when I moved into her house to learn how to be more successful in business. I dropped out of a graduate school program. I'd kind of sold everything in my apartment, driven across country. So imagine how I've gone all in. And the first thing she does is she puts a rubber band on my wrist. And she says, anytime you have a limiting belief, snap that wrist, snap it and say, cancel, cancel. And I'm thinking to myself, you guys, I'm like, I just dropped out of a doctoral program and drove across country. And this woman's crazy. It is amazing how much you can shift when you just become aware and how much we're surrounded by limiting beliefs. If I had not shifted that, the night the doctors told me to let my son die, I would have gone along with that. But I had a rubber band on my wrist, right? And I just was cancel. And I'm going to give you another one. And it's what she taught me to do that I used at the hospital every single day. I started my day this morning with it. And it is a way to do a gratitude practice that takes minutes a day, but can completely shift you. And I challenge everybody here to do this for just 1 week. So you can get that at jjvirgin.com/gratitude. Explains exactly how to start your day and then end your day. So your day is framed in gratitude and appreciation. And it's crazy what shifts when you do it.
Awesome.
I love that. And so jjvirgin.com, Warrior Mom.
Yep. jjvirgin.com/gratitude has that. Pretty much everything's at my website. And thank you guys for everything you've done for Grant. Grant's brain healed because of your supplements. So I appreciate you so much for everything you've done.
When you
give him our love.
When your book comes out, I want to interview you, and I can't wait to read your book. So looking really
all right.
cool.
Well, that book's out. I've got my next one going.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, good. I'm going to read it.
All right, my friend.
All right. Love
Happy
you guys.
Holidays. Love you. Thank you for
Thank you.
being with us today.
Pick up Warrior Mom. Excellent. Fantastic.
Oh my goodness. We have
our bonus guest.
Going and going and going.
So much great content. And now we have our bonus guest. This is so much fun. And how we are going to get all of his nuggets in 15 minutes is going to be interesting because he is a powerhouse.
Well, he and I are going to do a whole bunch more coming up.
So
we are going to introduce Dr. Joseph McClendon III, who is a neuropsychologist and one of the most sought after ultimate performance specialists. His unique brand of tell, show, do, teaching and coaching creates rapid personal change that effectively moves people to take more consistent action and go further, faster with their personal and business achievements. Joseph holds several certifications in neuroscience. He taught at UCLA. In 1986, he met and teamed up with Tony Robbins. That's actually where I first heard him at a UPW Unleash the Power Within event. And I just thought he was amazing. And I am so excited to learn from him and share our work with him as well.
Absolutely. Welcome.
Hi, Joseph.
Hi, kids. How are you?
We are awesome. How are you?
You know, I could not be better. I am so glad to be home. I was gone for 10 days. And after, COVID, I spent the last 10 months here at home and have grown accustomed to it. Travel maybe, for 3 days at a time, 4 days at a time, but this was too long.
So, well, welcome home.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, we are so happy. I mean, when I found out, I think I've mentioned this when we were doing our live chat, I found out you were going to be one of our speakers. I was doing like triple backflips down the hallway. I was just so excited. So this is so much fun. I have had the pleasure of seeing you many times, actually, because I've attended many of Tony Robbins' events and you're his head trainer and speak with him on stage frequently. So you are full of just pearls of wisdom. So
I thought you were going to say he was full of it.
Yeah, that could have gone either way.
And I'm like, that's no way to welcome him.
Oh my God. So no, you are an expert at helping people overcome fear and phobia. So we are in these unprecedented times. Yes. And I wish we had like 2 hours. We don't, but we want people to walk away with some great takeaways. What's something that you would talk to people about today and how to overcome emotional challenges when you're fearful? Is there something they can do quickly?
Yes, absolutely. And first off, I want to say two things. One, what you said, Dr. Amen, about my process is tell, show, try, do. Meaning, yeah, there's a lot of value in just telling people something and teaching people something, but the likelihood of them actually doing it is very, very small. In other words, a lot of people get a lot of information and they go, okay, that makes sense, I'm going to do it, but they have those emotional blocks that keep them from doing it. And so when we talk about emotional challenges, there's one or two things that you can do. Let's just use emotional challenges. The far end, the low end is depression. The high end is enthralled or excitement, okay? And everything in between there. But when we're talking about somebody that has, let's just say the low end on depression, and this is a little controversial, I got it, but I would say that 80, if not 100% of depression, ongoing depression, is self-sustained, meaning that we are the ones that keep it alive in ourselves. I love what Dr. Virgin just said, JJ said, with regard to she could feel the acid inside of her. And this is a very real thing because those cortisols that get released and all those chemicals get released in us when fight or flight comes up, when fear shows up. But the challenge is when fear shows up, we got two options. Number one, fight or flight. Number two, I say stay and play. And so when it shows up, we have that choice. But because we have been conditioned to stay with the fight or flight and focus on that and stay on that, then that chemical storm keeps going on inside of us. And it just keeps, and we sustain it. We wake up. Look, something bad can happen to the same thing to two different people. And one person is going to go, this has ruined my life. It's permanent, pervasive, and personal. It's ruined my life. And one person will go, this is just what happened. Now, what can I do about it? And the difference is that person that takes themselves out of it has a conversation and an interruption of that bad pattern. And I know, Dr. Amen, you and I talked about this before with regard to pattern interrupts. And so when I say tell, show, try, do, I rarely will say something that I don't give you something to do. So if it's okay, I'd like to give the audience something to do.
Yes.
And that is it. So no matter what, and as you said, we're in these unprecedented times right now. And there's a lot of challenges that are showing up. But when it shows up, not just what you do about it in that moment, but what you've conditioned yourself to do about it in that moment that happens automatically is what will determine how far you're going to go. We do what I call further, faster. And so trying to get rid of an emotion without doing anything about that emotion, in other words, opening it up, is futile. In other words, we've all had that. You can tell yourself, oh gosh, I feel good. This is bull and whatever. But if it's still there, if it's still coming around, you're still going to feel it. So you got to interrupt that pattern. And I say to thee, everybody listening, it's as simple as this: stand up. Stand up. It is, just literally stand up. Because when you think about somebody that's depressed, they're not standing, they're slumped over like this. They're sitting in a chair, usually watching Netflix or the media or something like that. And their physical body isn't in it. Their physical body is stuck. And that's when that acid storm is going on. But the action of literally standing up interrupts the pattern so that you can put something else in there. You've heard me say this before. I said it on your show the other day, that if you come into my office and you got a fear of dogs, take a guess what's going to be in my office. Yeah, there's going to be a dog. Why? Because I want you to experience it so that we can interrupt that pattern so that we can put something else in there. See, trying to put something on top of it doesn't work. And human beings...
Earlier, you can't move away from it. You got to move through it.
Yeah.
Right. The other interesting thing I think I heard is depression and anxiety, trauma, grief can become a bad habit.
It is a habit. You're so spot on.
These negative cognitions, the negative thoughts become habitual. And if you never challenge them, like I loved what JJ said about wearing the rubber band and we have a limiting belief, snap it, because then it attaches pain to the limiting belief.
I remember when I went to a Tony Robbins event, I know I came home, people thought I drank the Kool-Aid. They think you do all these crazy things. But things changed, and they changed radically for me. And it wasn't because I drank the Kool-Aid or took some magic pill. It was because one thing happened. I went in thinking I didn't have a choice because these are my circumstances. I came out with that thought cracked. I came out thinking there's possibility, that thought was cracked. And so therefore there's all these possibilities now. And it changed from, just like you said, what can I do?
Yes.
Just that one question.
When you open that up, you have so many options. When it's closed, you got one option: fight or flight.
Yeah.
When it's opened up, like I say, stay and play. And you got all kinds of options and lots of different things you can do because you start to feel good about yourself as well. And one of the things that we do there, and it's just part of the way that I teach, is just, I'm not only going to tell you something, I'm going to show you, and then we're going to try it. And I'm going to give you something to do outside of when you leave me, so that when you go back to your life, you've got something. In this case right now, I'm just saying to everybody, literally to interrupt that pattern, that rubber band snap, it interrupts the pattern. In other words, when you're getting this limiting belief and bam, you go, okay, wait a minute. And in that moment, you create what's called a scotoma. That scotoma is a blank spot. It's a vacuum, and it's begging for something to fill up. Mm-hmm. And so I say you got three choices. You can do nothing about it at all. When depression or unresourceful feelings come up, you can do nothing about it at all, which we all know what the result of that is going to be. It's going to be prolonged. It may go away, but chances are it's going to take a long time. You can wait for it to show up and then do something about it, or you can do preemptive strikes. And the preemptive strikes are the most effective. And that is, and everybody, if you're writing, you can write this down. Feel bad. Here's the process. Feel bad, interrupt the pattern, feel good, celebrate. Those four things will change your life. Feel bad.
Again, Joseph.
Feel bad on purpose. In other words, don't wait for it to show up. That's what happens to most of us. It's like we're sitting around, all of a sudden we feel bad again. Well, then it's a big monster. By that time, it's going to be harder to kill. So instead, call it to the forefront. Like I said, you come into my office, there's going to be a dog there, so I can call it to the forefront. So feel bad on purpose. Interrupt the pattern by standing up.
Dancing, jumping.
Say again?
The dancing and jumping that we do at the events.
Do that, but watch this. There's something else attached to it. Now you've been around me, so you know, I like to have fun and everything, but it's by design.
Yeah.
See, everything that I do is by design and science. It's not just, it just seems like fun and things like that. But so the feel bad, that. Interrupt the pattern, which is just standing up because you got that scotoma in your brain is going, what? And then the third thing is feel good. And it can be as simple as putting a smile on your face. Because we know this, when you smile, the brain releases dopamine and it makes our body feel good in that moment. And then when it feels good, the brain always goes, what happened for me to have gotten this dopamine release? And it will attach the fact that you snapped that thing or you interrupted the pattern. And then you celebrate, which is critical. It's the achievers.
Love it.
Yeah.
And so go ahead. Nope, go ahead.
Yeah. So that process. So in other words, I always tell people, listen, I like the rubber band idea, but this to me is even better. Your cell phone. Tell Siri to remind you every hour to, yeah, because it's brilliant because it's with us all the time, right? Most people even bring it with them to the toilet. But, so every hour when that thing goes off, then I do 10 times visit my bad feeling. Just for an instant, not, you don't mire in it and get bogged down with it. You just for a couple of seconds, feel it and then snap yourself out of it, stand up, put a smile on your face and pat yourself on the back. Do it again, do it 10 times. By the end of that 10th time, it's going to be really hard to even find that negative emotion. And lastly, I'll say this, you know of Dr. Sid Jacobson, Sid, NLP, amazing guy. And he said something that is true. Human beings don't do things out of intelligence or even survival. We do things out of habits, which is what you were just saying, Daniel, that we do things because we've gotten used to it. And so those habits of focusing on what we want, watching the bad media, doing whatever it is, those are habits. And that has become a just kind of self-fulfilling loop in our lives. So you got to interrupt those things. So instead of waiting, do a preemptive strike, use Siri, and just stand up. Because here's what happens, that last thing. And I always ask people, I say, listen, have you ever been doing this? And I don't know if everybody's watching me, but you're sitting in your house and you're sitting on the couch in the living room, you go, I got to go get an ink pen out of the kitchen. And you stand up and you go into the kitchen and you're standing in the kitchen going, the hell did I come in here for? That is a pattern interrupt in play. It happens to all of us. When you're sitting on the couch, you're focused on ink pen. Your physiology is ink pen. Your words are ink pen. But as soon as you stand up, you create that scotoma, you create that blank spot. And you're no longer, even if it's just for a moment, you're no longer focused on ink pen, you're no longer saying ink pen, and you're certainly no longer in that. And your brain is open up and it's a vacuum. And so that's an opportunity to put something else in there. You do it enough times, that becomes your habit.
I love that. So, and what I love is that you're not just talking the talk, you're walking the walk. I mean, I've heard you, and unfortunately we're wrapping up in a couple of minutes, but you actually were homeless, you struggled with discrimination issues, and you are where you are now. So this is not something that you're just telling people to do. This is how you got to where you're at.
It's how I got to where I am. And probably the best part about it is that I've helped thousands and thousands and thousands of other people do it for themselves as well. Somebody helped me when I was at my absolute worst. And that is my mission in life these days, is to spread the wealth, if you will.
So I want to tell people, just because the story that you told was so great. When you and I did the live chat, it's still on YouTube, it's still on Facebook. You can go watch that, because Joseph talks about his struggle, how he helped himself and, changed his mindset, and why, how to not be a victim. And it was just so amazing and so beautiful. So how can people find you, Joseph?
There's two things. You can go to my website, josephmcclendon.com. And if you will allow me to, and I just want to say this real quickly, I'm so unbelievably excited to work with the both of you. Doctor, I've been, and we set up my brain scan on Wednesday. So I can't wait for that, because this is going to be spectacular. But also I'd like to give everybody a gift, if it's okay. And that is, if you find me on I Am Joseph McClendon on Instagram, and you click on the profile link, there's something that I call the New Year's evolution. Instead of waiting until New Year's Eve and doing what we always do, resolutions, there's something, and it's free. It's no strings attached. It is a workbook and an audio that is going to get you setting the stakes in the ground with a lot of processes as well, so that we're not waiting till New Year's Eve to make these resolutions that most of us made the same ones last year. So it's my gift to you. I am Joseph.com. Yeah.
Well, we will post that as well. I am very excited. And when you said, I heard the live chat, that you were really excited to get your scan. That's the mindset of someone who ends up with a better brain, because they're like, what does it look like?
As opposed
what
to,
is it?
I don't want to do it because I'm scared.
Or I don't want to see it.
Right.
So
I'm
so excited to see you coming up soon. Thank you for being part of overcoming anxiety, depression, trauma, and grief. And I just can't wait to learn more.
You are truly a treasure, and we are just so grateful.
My pleasure. And thank you both as well.
Take care.
Thanks, Joseph.
Bye-bye.
So much fun. So awesome.
All right. So you get to introduce our next guest.
Yes, I do. Our next guest is you, my husband, Dr.
Oh my
Daniel
goodness.
Newman. I am so excited.
I thought I was just the eye candy today.
So I'm going to talk to you about what part the brain plays in all of this. So this is fun for me. So I don't think you need a lot of introduction. People are here because they know you, they know us, they know the work we do. But you are amazing. Besides everything you do, you are my best friend, my hero. And I'm just so excited. So besides the fact that you've written, I don't even know how many books anymore, but at least 12 of them are New York Times bestsellers. You are incredible. And you have done so much work. You've got the world's largest database of scans. Most people know we do brain scans. Most of them are here because they want to win a brain scan. That's okay.
Right. If you stay till the end, we're going to give away a free evaluation. So it's not just a scan. It's a scan, yes, but also an evaluation, because you have to put the scan in the context of who you are. And, this is just a historically stressful time, except I think for us, it's been a really good time because I've not had to travel. You've not had to travel.
Well, and we like each
more time than ever.
And we like each other.
We are blessed, but it's in part because we work hard on our relationship.
We choose every day. We make a choice every day, and we actually put the work into that. So it's not hard work. It's work. It's something you choose to do.
Well, and one of the gifts, if you go to relentlesscourage.com, yes, I want you to pre-order the book because I'm so proud of her and it's a great book. But one of the gifts is something I developed a long time ago called the One-Page Miracle. And I bring that up because it's really important. And it's one of the reasons we do well together is you are crystal clear on what we want in our relationships. And I want you to be crystal clear on what you want. So under the relationship part with your significant other is I always want kind, caring, loving, supportive, passionate relationship. I always want that. There's never a time when I don't want that. That's a frontal lobe function, right? I'm feeding that into my brain. But I don't always feel like that, right? I get these rude thoughts that come into my head and almost always, not always, but I inhibit them because it doesn't get me what I want. And that's why, because you asked, what does the brain play in this? If my brain is healthy, then I can direct my behavior to get me what I want.
Right. So we've talked for the last, dear Lord, over an hour now, about all these different tools and strategies and the 4 circles. Basically, we've been looking at behavior and getting well through the 4 circles and managing your life through the 4 circles. But we haven't really talked about what role the brain plays yet. So let's talk about what happens if someone's got a brain injury or versus someone who has a healthy brain. Like, why is the brain so important in mood and
Well, and I
behavior.
think you write about it in The Relentless Courage, because one of the big takeaways from that book is it's easy to call people bad. It's really hard to go, why?
Well, and it's one of the reasons that another one of the gifts is a 4-circle worksheet on not only evaluating yourself and why you maybe have made some of the bonehead decisions you think you've made, why you judge yourself so harshly, but why you judge some of the people that have hurt you so harshly. It helps you see them in a different light through that biological, psychological, social, and spiritual circle. And what happened to them in their past?
Well, and if your brain's not right, it's hard to be thoughtful. It's hard to be effective. And I think the number one hallmark of success is making good decisions.
Right.
That ultimately your health, your wealth, your relationships is a sum of all of the decisions that you've made. And the organ of decision making is your brain.
So talk to people about, because we gave them a lot of really great information for software, but the brain is sort of the hardware that runs that software. So talk about the difference between the software and the hardware. Like why?
Well, I mean, if this 3 pounds, mostly fat, between your ears is not healthy, you can have the best. Like the
best coaches.
Tony Robbins came to the clinic. You met him. And
one of my heroes.
He and I did a live chat. And I've been to his events, and he's just masterful at teaching software programming. But it doesn't work for everybody because often they have hardware problems,
right,
and they can't run the software programming.
And I think understanding that one thing, it's like if the software is not working and I really am trying and I really want it to work, maybe I need to fix the hardware so I can get them both to run properly.
So you can get them both to run properly. Hardware first and then software.
Right.
Because if you try to program a computer that has hardware problems, it's not likely to take.
So hardware problems, brain injury,
toxic exposure like mold exposure, or infections. We know COVID-19 impacts brain function. I mean, the
Lyme
first symptoms for a lot of people is they lose their sense of smell and taste. That's a nervous system problem.
But people who have had Lyme disease or meningitis or things like that,
Epstein-Barr, something called toxoplasmosis, a parasite you can get from cats. All of those can negatively impact brain function. Yes, you can inherit things like ADD or bipolar disorder.
So what about menopause?
That's when women pause on men. Is that?
No, hormones, for real, hormones.
Well, if you want to keep your brain healthy, or rescue it if it's headed for the dark place, you have to prevent or treat the 11 major risk factors that steal your mind. I write about this in all of my recent books, and we have a mnemonic called Bright Minds, and the N is neurohormone deficiencies.
Right.
And if hormones are low, then your brain doesn't work right.
Right.
And do you know why our hormones drop with age?
Because the planet's trying to get rid of us.
Because the planet's trying to get rid of you. And I don't know about you, but I'm not okay with that. And so finding ways, every year you should measure and optimize your hormones. And you struggled with thyroid issues since you were in your 20s.
And one thing we don't talk about.
Probably before.
Oh, yeah. No, they think I had Hashimoto's when I was really young. So that's part of the problem. But I had a hysterectomy a couple of years ago, and the anesthesia, I did not feel normal after I had anesthesia.
Oh, no. And we scanned you and you were definitely not yourself.
I was like walking through mud and I just suddenly didn't feel right. My energy was not right. So all of these things.
So in the T in Bright Minds is toxins. So drugs, alcohol, not a health food. If you're managing the pandemic with alcohol, you want to rethink that. As Joseph said, like stand up and go do something else. Marijuana, same thing. But one of the things I learned is general anesthesia can also have a negative impact on brain function. Now, it doesn't mean you don't get the hysterectomy.
No, you got to do what you got to do.
Right, because you were like carrying a baby around. It was so big.
Okay, that was TMI. Just TMI.
But you still get the surgery, but then you do brain rehab. And in my book, The End of Mental Illness, I talk about brain rehab and how important it is to put your brain in a healing state. Ultimately, brain health is three things. Brain envy, got to care about it. Avoid things that hurt your brain. Know the Bright Minds risk factors. Do things that help.
I'm going to add one thing to that. You have to assess it to know first. So not everybody's, we've got one person getting a scan today and a full evaluation. That's why a lot of people are here. Not everybody's going to come to our clinics and get a scan, but they can assess their brain in a different way. So if you're not coming to one of our clinics, if you're in another country, it's just not a possibility for you. They can assess their brain in a different way.
Well, I mean, for free, you can go to brainhealthassessment.com, know your brain type, and also your brain health score. Brainhealthassessment.com. It's not as good as getting a scan because we get a direct look at your brain. We now have 9 clinics across the United States, and we have a brand new clinic in Dallas, Texas, which we're just thrilled about, but New York and Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Chicago, now Dallas, Bellevue, Washington, San Francisco, L.A., and Orange County. So
I will never forget. I write about it in I read there's a whole beautiful chapter about when we met and how we met and how I almost canceled my first date with you, and in your words, how I tortured you for a year and a half. But I will never forget we don't have time for that. But I will never forget when you asked me, well, you didn't ask me, you sort of tricked me into coming to the clinic, but I thought you did get brownie points for most original line ever. It's like, can I see your naked brain? Right. So brownie points for that. I'd heard a lot of lines in my lifetime. That one was brilliant.
I was so taken with you. You're smart. You're funny. You're beautiful. My little heart's like beating fast, but I knew I wasn't going to fall in love with you until I saw your brain.
Well, and you thought my brain was pretty good. Being the perfectionist that I am, I'm a recovering perfectionist, part of what the book is about, but I was not happy when I saw my brain.
Yeah, well, you hurt the left front side of your brain. And I asked you, did you ever have a head injury? And you said no, because you thought...
I'm a neurosurgical ICU nurse. Brain injury means you have you're missing part of your skull. You're in a coma. Right. You have drains.
But she
in your
said
brain.
No, like over and over again. And I went, we're in a car accident. And she says, well, my sister fell asleep at the wheel going 75 miles an hour. The car flipped 2.5 times. The roof was crushed. But
I walked away.
But what do you think happened with that very soft jello-like brain?
My head hit the center, the console.
In a skull that has sharp bony ridges doing this at 75 miles an hour and then
into the
stopping.
console, right.
Not good.
So you could see it on my scan. And I was like, and then the other thing you said to me, you told me about depression, that you went through a really hard time. There was a time in my life I went through a wicked depression, wanted to die. And I had told you about it. And you said, I'm looking at your scan and I did they prescribe an antidepressant for you? And I said, yes. And you said, well, I hope it wasn't Prozac. That's not something I would prescribe for you. And I'm like, dear Lord, that explains my whole life. I'm like, why? And you said, because that is what they gave to me. You said, because you have sleepy frontal lobes. And with sleepy frontal lobes, what Prozac does is it increases the availability of serotonin, which causes your frontal lobes to drop further and can cause you to be very impulsive. Oh boy. I'm like, it just explained my whole life. Like there was 8 months of my life where I made very bad decisions, causing some self-induced trauma, and it took me a while to dig myself out.
And those stories are in the book, and they're very interesting.
But it was so interesting just having that validation and understanding what was going on in my brain and just being able to see it so clearly was so interesting to me. So the brain matters, and it's
one would think.
Yeah. And I really did. I did a good job of really running that software, but I had to work harder at it. I worked harder at it. I never realized that I wasn't meeting my full potential until I actually sort of got my brain right. That's what was cool.
Yeah, no, when I talked about ADD, you go,
that goes nonsense.
Nonsense. It's an excuse for bad behavior, an excuse to fail. And then Your mom has wicked ADD. Your uncle has ADD.
I used to drink 2 pots of coffee. I have to work out at 4:30 in the morning to clear the cobwebs.
Yeah, and getting your brain right doesn't mean you're disordered. Getting your brain right just means you're smart and you want to optimize the physical functioning of your brain, sort of like you want to drive a car that has an engine that is tuned right. Because with a better brain always comes a better life.
So I do want to just point out, I am very proud of this book. It was hard for me to make the decision to write it, but The Relentless Courage of a Scared Child, How Persistence, Grit, and Faith Created a Reluctant Healer is available. If you go to relentlesscourage.com, I have almost $500 worth of gifts for you. We have the one-page miracle that you talked about, how to really focus on what you want. We have a digital journal that we recorded that is really just helpful. It's concise, it's helpful. It really helps you focus on changing the story of your life, just really writing it and then changing the ending to something more positive. A mindfulness training audio, 4-circle exercise,
Tell me
which
about
is
the mindfulness training audio.
It's really like helping them learn about mindfulness meditation is really what it's about.
And how long is it?
Oh, it's like 10 minutes.
And they can just listen to
you
it,
just listen to
and
it.
it actually gets them into a meditative state.
Right. And so
It's
if you
so important.
sometimes
It's so easy.
Well, and sometimes it's
so
hard to do
important.
yourself, but if you just have someone walking you through it initially, then eventually you can do it yourself. We have the 4-circle exercise, which is sort of what we did today, but it'll help you just see things differently. And we've got a digital course that we recorded, which is just amazing. Also, for every book that is pre-ordered, I'm donating a book. So I'm donating a book to people in need. So far we've already targeted Salvation Army. They're taking books for their people who are in need. We've got Laura's House for battered women. We've got a couple of other big charity organizations that are taking books. For every book purchased, I'm going to donate a book that are pre-ordered. And then I'm also donating 10% of the proceeds to our foundation, because that is how we give away these scans. So the evaluation of the scan that we're giving away today is coming from that foundation. So just FYI, go to relentlesscourage.com if you are interested. So that's fun. And now I think the part that a lot of people are waiting for is knowing who won. I think people want to know, right?
Inquiring minds want to know.
So we can't give the name. So here's how it's going to go. We're going to read the number. This is your confirmation number. Don't panic if you don't have it. We don't need you to come forward right this minute. What we're going to do is read your confirmation number, because we don't want to violate your privacy. So we're going to read your confirmation number, and then we're going to send you an email when the event is over, and you'll have 72 hours to collect it. If you don't collect it within that 72 hours, then the next person in line will be chosen. So let's see. We have confirmation number. Drum roll, please. 15548667557.
Yes.
I'm going to read it again.
That was celebrating.
Yes. Okay. 15548667557. We are so happy for all of the people who entered. We are just really excited. We are thrilled that you spent your Saturday morning with us. We hope you got lots of takeaways. I mean, these are world-class speakers. I think they were amazing. And let's
talk about some of the other, because we still have 12 minutes. Let's talk about some of the other resources we have for you. If you are struggling with anxiety, depression, trauma, or grief, Tana and I have a brand new public television special coming out at the end of February. It'll be nationwide, and it's called Overcoming Anxiety, Depression, Trauma, and Grief. Just given the pandemic and all the things that are happening around the world. So we're really excited about that. Tana and I also do a podcast, The Brain Warrior's Way, downloaded nearly 11 million times. There's about 800 episodes. We have great guests like Dr. Sharon May or JJ Virgin.
We need to have Joseph on.
Derwin. We absolutely should have Joseph on. I just love that. Practice feeling bad.
Yeah.
and then
Work through it.
interrupt it.
Yeah.
And then when you interrupt it, go to a better place and celebrate. It's just so easy. And in order to get well, you need to make it simple. The simpler you can make it, the more likely you'll actually do that. So we have the new show. We have the podcast. You can go to brainwarriorswaypodcast.com. It's all free. You can donate it. I have a new book out called The End of Mental Illness that I think is the best thing I've written.
I agree.
In March, I have a really fun book coming out called Your Brain is Always Listening, in part about the dragons from the past that are still breathing fire on your emotional brain.
You can also follow us on, both of us do a lot of work on social media that's really just practical tips and takeaways on a daily basis. So at Tana Amen or at Dr. Daniel Amen, and you can follow those practical tips.
And what are you doing during the pandemic that's helped you the most? But what are some of the mistakes that you've made?
I really try to follow these. It's based on those 4 circles. So the biology, what are you doing for your body? What are you doing for your brain? Who are you hanging out with? And what's your bigger meaning and purpose? I really follow that same thing as far as how to make myself feel better during all of this. And so everything you put on the end of your fork matters. Moving your body matters. How you think, disciplining your thoughts.
But early in the pandemic, our teenage daughter had a fit. And one of the most helpful things you and I did was we honored the historical time we're in. And we went, it's a pandemic. And she's not one to usually have fits. And so we went, it's a pandemic. You get a tantrum a week.
We're going to practice grace.
And you get it. And now we're like week 40 into the pandemic, and nobody's had more than 4 or 5 tantrums. And so if you honor it and you don't get too upset
out by it
about what's going on, and you practice grace and forgiveness, I think it has helped us.
Oh, for sure.
So much at home.
And you asked sort of what I do, but what have been the mistakes? So the eating right, exercising, keeping my immune system strong, disciplining my thoughts, focusing on who, you're not hanging out with people in real life, but really, I joined a prayer group and do that on Zoom. And so for me, that's my spiritual and my social. But the mistakes I made, early on, just really relaxing too much. I didn't want to be the food police with the kids because I felt like they had lost so much. I just couldn't do one more thing. And so I just couldn't do it. And so I was focused on germs. I'm focused on preparing. I'm focused on all these things. I'm like, I just can't do it right now. And sure enough, within about 2 weeks, everyone started to not feel good, to be depressed, to be throwing more tantrums. And I didn't feel good. And so that was one of the mistakes. The other one was the news. I was so focused on the news. And I finally told you, if you want to watch the news, because it doesn't affect you the same way, go in your office. Because when I watch the news, Crisis News Network, I am screaming at the TV. So, I'm just I'm wired for sound. And so I realized if I don't turn the news on, if I'm sitting in my backyard drinking tea and watching my hummingbirds, nothing is wrong in the world. And so really turning the news off and joining my prayer group and just focusing on more positivity changed everything for me. So those are some of the mistakes I made.
So one of the strategies that I learned from one of the guys on our podcast, Dr. Stephen Hayes, was give your mind a name. And I've been playing with this with my patients and with the kids at home. Give your mind a name. And so the name I gave my mind was Hermie. And Hermie was my pet raccoon when I was 16. So I really had a pet raccoon, got her from the pet store. It was her. I didn't know it was her when I gave her a name. And she talked all the time. And I'm just I never knew what she was saying. But when you separate from your mind just a little bit and you can evaluate, Are you helping me? Are you hurting me? One of my patients, so hard on herself. I'm like, would you ever talk to another person that way? If you had a child, would you ever talk to the child? She'd go, no, I'd be abusive. Like, so where do you get that? So give your mind a name. I treat a hockey player and he's really hard on himself. And I'm like, so what name would you give your mind? And he was having trouble coming up with it. And he was really hard on himself. I said, do you have a nemesis in hockey? And it's like, couple of them. I said, well, think of one of them. And if he got on the ice with you, would you let him win? No. And so I gave him the name Johnny. So I don't know who it is, but Amelie, the little one, gave her name Mushu, the little funny dragon
from Mulan.
And Alize gave her name Frank from Shameless. It's just so helpful. And then, because at dinner, I'll go, say, how's Frank? Just to get her to separate, because as we talked earlier, negative thinking is a very bad habit.
Right. And your thoughts lie.
And your thoughts lie. They lie a lot. And you don't have to believe every stupid thought you have. And coming up over the next couple of months, we're going to teach you how to kill the ants, the automatic negative thoughts, tame the dragons, right? You don't want to slay your internal dragons. You want to tame them and get them to work for you so you can ride them rather than they're breathing fire on you.
Yeah, no, this has been so much fun. I know that a lot of people listening, you guys are here, besides the scan and the evaluation. A lot of people are here because it's been a difficult time. It's been challenging. You are dealing with trauma, depression, anxiety, and some of you are triggered because of PTSD from your past, like I was. I got triggered, but I caught myself and realized it. And, one of the things I write about, I think you asked about it, which was kintsugi. So kintsugi is my favorite art form. We talked about that earlier, about how the pottery with its breaks. The Japanese think of that broken pottery as being more beautiful when it's repaired. And so as we begin to close, I want people to think about that. Rather than feeling shame or feeling angry at yourself or beating yourself up for what you're going through or where you've been. I love what Derwin Gray had to say. You are precious for all of those things. Those stories tell, those broken pieces tell a story, and you're stronger because of the repairs. And I think of that as God's golden repair. So as we come to a close, as we're coming to the end, I just want you to think of that as, we all have this opportunity to be stronger, to be more purposeful, that you are more beautiful, not in spite of those breaks, but because of them. Those broken pieces, they all tell a story. So I would be honored if you do pick up The Relentless Courage of a Scared Child.
Pre-order today, get all these wonderful gifts. I mean, you really have an opportunity to transform your life. And reading Tana's story will inspire you. That's what we've seen, that people who've read the book have just been so inspired. All of us have hurts inside, but reading stories of people who've transformed their lives can help you transform yours.
Yeah, it's, I remember when you asked me to write the book, and I was like, you're out of your mind. First of all, I'm not talking about my past. That's not going to happen. But I also thought, why would anybody want to hear my story? It's not that big of a deal compared to what other people have been through. We tend to minimize, it's like, on one hand, we're suffering. And on the other hand, we minimize it and think, well, other people have been through worse things. And we play this game with ourselves. And, but then when I actually did write it and having people come forward, it makes a difference. So, it'd be wonderful if you use the journal that we're providing as one of the gifts and you start to write your story. It's like, what part of your painful experiences, like I would have never known that wicked depression, that wanting to die at one point in my life would become the thing that would help people later. That's my purpose. Like it's what Derwin Gray was talking about. What are you going through that is so painful in your life, or has been so painful in your life that you thought it was just all consuming? Like the most painful moments in your life, the most tragic things in your life can become the most hopeful thing in someone else's life. If you just allow that healing to take place, if you allow that like the consume, God's golden repair to happen.
I'm so proud of you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you all for being with us. We appreciate you and just grateful to have you part of our community. Have an amazing holiday weekend.
Hi, I'm Tana Amon, author of The Relentless Courage of a Scared Child, a memoir where I talk about my chaotic and sometimes terrifying childhood. I experienced abandonment, sexual abuse, and anxiety. As a young adult, I battled cancer, debilitating depression, and a never-ending fight to feel valued. I also suffered silently with an eating disorder. But because of my traumatic past, I'm now a passionate champion for others in need of healing and hope. And along with my husband, Dr. Daniel Amen, world-renowned psychiatrist, I've had the privilege of educating millions of people around the world about brain health. Are you haunted with a traumatic past? Do you still suffer from anxiety, trauma, or grief? I believe you'll relate to my story of overcoming. I know I'm not alone. In The Relentless Courage of a Scared Child, I'm sharing my story of courage to face my past and embrace truth, to inspire others to engage in a journey of healing. I hope you'll join me.